I was sending my parents $1,500 every month for what I thought were house repairs, only to later discover they were secretly using it to fund my sister's luxurious lifestyle. I always thought my marriage was a solid front. My wife and I had been together for 8 years, and we had a 5-year-old son who kept us busy. I worked long hours as a manager at a logistics firm, and she stayed home to take care of the kid. On the surface, everything looked normal: family dinners, weekend park trips, the usual routine. But about 2 years ago, I started noticing things that didn't add up. My son's hair was a shade of brown that didn't match mine or my wife's, and his eyes were green when both of us have dark brown. I pushed the thought aside at first, chalking it up to genetics being weird. Then I met my secretary, Lauren, and everything shifted. She started at the company a year ago, and the late nights at the office turned into something else entirely. The doubts about my son started small. I'd catch myself staring at him during breakfast, trying to see my features in his face. Nothing clicked. My wife would talk about her day, playdates, grocery runs, the usual, and I'd nod along, but my mind was elsewhere. I never brought it up because I didn't want the fight. Meanwhile, work was piling up. Lauren was efficient, sharp, and always stayed late to help me sort through schedules and contracts. One night, we ordered takeout after a brutal deadline, and she laughed at some dumb joke I made. That's when it hit me: she was easy to be around, no baggage, no tension. We kissed that night in the break room, and I didn't stop it. It felt like a release from the pressure building up at home. Things with Lauren escalated fast. Late nights turned into a full-blown affair. We'd meet at her place or a cheap motel off the highway, nothing fancy, just convenient. I'd tell my wife I was stuck at the office, and she never questioned it. She was too busy with the kid or scrolling on her phone. The guilt was there at first, but it faded every time I looked at my son and wondered if he was even mine. I started digging, checking old photos, timelines of when she got pregnant. The math was off. We'd been rocky back then, barely sleeping together, and yet she announced she was expecting like it was a miracle. I couldn't shake the feeling she'd been with someone else. Lauren became my escape from that mess. The suspicion about my son grew into an obsession. I'd lie awake at night next to my wife, replaying every moment from 6 years ago when she told me she was pregnant. We'd been fighting a lot back then, money was tight, I was stressed at work, and she'd started going out more with her friends. She'd come home late, blaming it on girls' nights or helping a coworker through a breakup. I didn't push her for details because I was too tired to care. Then one day, out of nowhere, she said she was pregnant, and I just accepted it. We patched things up, moved forward, had the kid. But now, looking back, it didn't make sense. The timing was too convenient, and our sex life had been basically non-existent around then. I started doing the math over and over in my head, and it kept pointing to one conclusion: the kid wasn't mine. At work, Lauren was the only thing keeping me grounded. She didn't ask about my home life or pry into my problems, she just listened when I vented and kept things light. We'd grab drinks after work sometimes, and it turned into a routine. I'd sit across from her at some dive bar, watching her sip a beer, and feel like I could breathe for the first time all day. She was single, no kids, no complications. Her apartment was a small one-bedroom, cluttered with books and plants, and it became my hideout. I'd tell my wife I had a late meeting or a project due, and she'd nod without looking up from her phone. It was like she didn't even notice I was pulling away. The affair wasn't just physical anymore, it was emotional too. Lauren started leaving notes on my desk, little things like, "Don't forget to eat," with a sandwich she'd picked up for me. I'd catch myself smiling at them, something I hadn't done at home in months. My wife and I were just roommates now, keeping up appearances for the kid. We'd sit at the dinner table, her scrolling through recipes she'd never cook, me staring at my plate, the kid babbling about his day. I'd play along, ask him about school, nod at the right times, but it felt like a performance. Every time I looked at him, those green eyes stared back, and I'd think about how they didn't come from me. I stopped feeling bad about Lauren around then. If my wife had cheated first, and I was damn sure she had, then what I was doing wasn't betrayal. It was survival. The marriage was a lie, and the kid was proof of it. I didn't have hard evidence yet, but I didn't need it. The way my wife avoided my questions about back then, the way she changed the subject when I brought up old memories, it was enough. Lauren was my way out of the charade, and I wasn't about to let go of that. I decided to get proof about my son. It wasn't enough to just suspect anymore. I needed to know for sure. I ordered a DNA test kit online, the kind where you swab your cheek and send it off. I waited until my wife was out running errands one Saturday, then sat the kid down with some juice and a cartoon. I told him it was a game, swabbed his mouth quick, and did mine too. The whole thing took 5 minutes. I mailed it off that afternoon, and the waiting started. Every day after that, I checked the mailbox like a maniac, hoping the results would come fast. Work became a blur. Lauren noticed I was distracted, but I brushed it off, saying it was just stress. She didn't push, which made me lean on her even more. The affair was in full swing now. We'd meet up 3, sometimes 4 times a week. I'd leave the house after dinner, claiming I had to finish reports, and head straight to her place. My wife never asked where I was going anymore. She just mumbled something about keeping my phone on. It was like she knew something was off but didn't want to deal with it. Lauren's apartment felt more like home than my own house did. We'd cook together sometimes, simple stuff like pasta or burgers, and sit on her couch watching old movies. It was easy, uncomplicated. I started leaving a spare shirt there, then a toothbrush. She didn't mind, she'd just smile and make room in her drawer. The kid was the only thing tying me to the marriage. If he wasn't mine, I'd have no reason to stay. I started imagining what it'd be like to leave, take my stuff, move out, maybe even start over with Lauren. She never brought up the future, but I could tell she was getting attached. She'd linger when I left her place, kissing me longer than usual, and I'd drive home feeling torn. Part of me wanted to end it with my wife right then, but I needed the DNA results first. If I was wrong about the kid, I'd have to rethink everything. But deep down, I knew I wasn't wrong. The way my wife acted, the gaps in her stories, it all pointed to her hiding something big. Lauren asked me once if I was okay, late at night when we were lying in her bed. I said yeah, just tired, but she didn't buy it. She didn't press though, just ran her hand through my hair and let it drop. That's when I realized I was falling for her. It wasn't just about escaping my marriage anymore, it was about her. The DNA test was still out there, looming over me, but Lauren was keeping me sane while I waited. I stopped caring what my wife thought about my late nights. She didn't deserve my loyalty, not after what I was sure she'd done. The DNA results came back after 3 weeks. I opened the envelope in my car outside the office, hands shaking. The report was clear, 0% chance I was the father. My son wasn't mine. I sat there for an hour, staring at the paper, feeling everything collapse. My wife had lied to me for years, and I'd been raising someone else's kid. I drove straight to Lauren's place after that. I told her everything, the test, the affair I was sure my wife had, the fake family I'd been living in. She listened, nodded, didn't judge. That night I didn't go home. I stayed with Lauren, and it felt like the first honest decision I'd made in years. My wife called the next morning, asking where I was. I said I'd been at the office, needed space. She didn't argue, just hung up. I went home later that day to grab some clothes. She was in the kitchen, feeding the kid lunch. I didn't say anything about the test, kept it in my pocket like a weapon I wasn't ready to use. I packed a bag and left again. Lauren let me crash at her place without asking questions. Work became my excuse to stay away from home. I'd leave early, come back late, and spend every free minute with Lauren. My wife texted a few times, asking when I'd be home, but I kept it vague. I started planning my exit. I checked our bank accounts, everything was joint, so I'd need to split it clean. I talked to a lawyer friend off the record, asked about divorce and what happens when the kid's not yours. He said I'd still owe child support unless I could prove fraud, but it'd be a fight. I didn't care about the money, I just wanted out. Lauren was on board, said she'd stick by me whatever I decided. That sealed it. I wasn't going back to the lie I'd been living. The kid was the only loose end, but he wasn't my responsibility anymore, not biologically, not emotionally. My wife had made her choice years ago, and now I was making mine. I confronted my wife a week later. I waited until the kid was asleep, then laid the DNA results on the table. She stared at them, face blank, then started crying. She admitted it. 6 years ago, she'd slept with some guy she met at a bar during one of her late nights out. It was a one-time thing, she said, and she didn't know whose kid it was until he was born. She kept it from me because she didn't want to lose me. I listened, said nothing, then told her I was done. I'd been staying with Lauren, and I wasn't coming back. She begged me to stay for the kid, said he needed a father. I told her she should have thought of that before she cheated. I moved out that night. Took my clothes, my laptop, some books, left everything else. Lauren helped me settle into her place. It was tight, but it worked. I filed for divorce the next day. My lawyer said it'd be messy since we'd been married so long, but I didn't care. I wanted it over. My wife kept calling, leaving voicemails about how I was ruining the family. I ignored them. The kid wasn't mine, and I wasn't going to keep playing dad to someone else's son. Lauren stayed steady, cooked dinner, kept me focused. She didn't ask for much, just wanted me there. Work was my cover. I told my boss I was going through personal stuff, needed flexibility. He didn't pry, just nodded. I kept up the late hours, but now it was to avoid thinking about the divorce. My wife hired a lawyer too, started pushing for alimony and child support. I told my lawyer about the DNA test, said I wasn't paying for a kid that wasn't mine. He said we'd fight it, but it'd take time. I didn't tell Lauren the details, she didn't need the stress. She was already doing enough, letting me crash with her while I figured it out. My wife's lies had broken everything, and I wasn't going back to fix it. The divorce dragged on for months. My wife's lawyer argued I'd acted as the kid's father for 5 years, so I should pay support regardless of DNA. My lawyer countered with the fraud angle, her cheating, the lie about the kid being mine. We settled out of court. I agreed to a small lump sum to avoid alimony, and no child support since I proved he wasn't mine. She kept the house, I didn't fight for it. I signed the papers in February, and that was it, 8 years over. I didn't see the kid after that. My wife stopped calling once the money cleared. I heard through a mutual friend she was dating someone new, but I didn't care. Lauren and I got serious. I moved into her place officially, paid half the rent. We didn't talk about the past much, she knew it was done, and I didn't want to rehash it. Work stabilized. I got a promotion, more hours, better pay. It kept me busy. Lauren started hinting at a future, maybe a bigger place, a trip somewhere. I nodded along, not ready to plan too far ahead. She was patient, didn't push. My old life felt like a ghost now, just a bad memory I'd left behind. The kid crossed my mind sometimes, but I shut it down fast. He wasn't my problem. My parents found out through my sister, who'd heard from my wife. They called, asked why I didn't tell them. I said it was my business, not theirs. They didn't like Lauren, thought I'd moved on too quick. I told them they didn't get it, my wife had cheated first, lied for years. They went quiet after that, didn't bring it up again. Lauren and I kept building. We got a dog, a scruffy mutt from the shelter. It was small, but it felt like a step. I didn't regret leaving. My wife had made her bed, and I'd found something real with Lauren. The marriage had been a sham, and I was done pretending.